Welcome, everybody. Happy Tuesday. Welcome to a special episode of Real Talk with T-Made. I'm officially in the building. And I want to welcome everybody. Thank you. I hope you all are having a wonderful Tuesday afternoon. This is going to be a very, very important conversation. So I want to tell you all to please like, share, and comment, and especially comment because we really want you all to be engaged in this conversation that we're having today. So let's get right into it, you all, because we have a lot to discuss. We have a lot to talk about. As you all know, last Thursday, there was a vote taken by JCPS board, and it was decided that school would resume on March 17th. So that was a very emotional decision, as you all saw in all media outlets and in the press. But it has been voted that schools will resume on March 17th in Jefferson County. So to discuss and to really get into how that will happen and to get some feedback on how the community is feeling, we have a panel of administrators, teachers, and parents that we called on to kind of guide your way through this. If you all had any questions or if you all just had any concerns, hopefully through this conversation, those things can be answered. So we'll introduce our wonderful panel right now. Okay, so first we have LaFay Marshall, who is a theater teacher at Ramsey Middle. She's also the department chair over the related arts program classes. And she is also a member of the Equity Committee and, most importantly, a sponsor for the Black Student Union. Welcome, LaFay. How are you doing?
I'm doing fine. Thank you.
With us today. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, next we have Gay Adelman, who is the moderator and founder of Dear JCPS. How you doing, Gay?
I'm great. Thank you for having me.
Thank you for being here. Thank you. We also have my best friend that I grew up with, Charles Marshall, who is the assistant principal at Fern Creek High School. How you doing, Chuck?
I'm good. Glad to be here.
That Chuck slipped out.
It did slip out. It's all good, though.
Okay. Also, I have another good friend of mine. She goes by the name of Marina Gonzalez, and she also went to school with me and Charles. And she is the parent of JCPS students and has been for the last 24 years. Wow.
Hello, everyone.
How you doing?
Honored to be part of this group.
Thank you. And last but not least, we have Natasha Craig, who is the FRC at Foster Elementary School. And how are you doing, Natasha?
I am well. I'm well.
Thank you for joining us today. Thank you so much. So that is our panel. And also, we have with us my wife, who will be helping me moderate this panel tonight. And she goes by the name of Nari Clayton Taylor, and I'll let her introduce herself.
Hi, y'all.
You just gonna say hi, y'all. You just say hi, y'all. So let's start here, okay? Let's start here. I think what I really want to do right now, I really want to set the tone and just talk to a parent about. Let's go back a year, and I like to ask Marina in starting. What was your reaction when you learned last February that JCPS schools would no longer be in session because of the pandemic? What was your reaction when you first heard that?
It was devastating to some extent because my daughter was actually an 8th grader. So those transition years, as we all know, are really important. While she had gotten through most of her required learning, the idea that she wouldn't be able to see her teachers who she had been with for 3 years, the administrators in the school who had done so much to create an environment for her that was, conducive to learning and enjoying her experience, and then just not even being able to kind of walk through that school building again, I think was critical for her. So it was heartbreaking. It was devastating. It was a mad rush to set up our in-home learning situation, making sure that we had everything that we needed here for her to be successful. But we were able to get through it. So that's a positive.
Yes. And let me ask Natasha Craig, as an FRC at Foster Elementary, how did you tell the kids, and how did you help them deal with this transition that, of course, they didn't expect, they've never been through, and a lot of them honestly just truly didn't understand what was going on. So how did you engage the students and make sure that you answered their questions so they were prepared for what was going on? How did you approach that, Latasha?
Being that I'm a social worker, I'm always in the mode of, let's get it. And so just reassuring them that no matter where they were, we would continue to be a part of what's going on with them. The kids, and the families have contacted me, have my contact information. And so honestly, work didn't stop for me. My children were at home, and I won't be telling the truth if I said that it was easy. It's a lot harder working from home, and not just because of trying to do everything that you need to do for your own children, but just the resources are not at your fingertips. And so when your parents call and they need things, trying to work that out. And I am a person that, I can't, I have to get it done. You know what I'm saying? And so if I can't get it done, then it bothers me. So that was the biggest thing for me, is just making sure that my kids knew that no matter where they went, that we were there. Fortunately at Foster, we have a very loving environment for our children. So the parents are very comfortable with reaching out and asking. And that's been a good thing. So it was just, I have a relationship with all of them. And I think more than anything, my fifth graders were the ones who were the most devastated, because we were so close to, the end of the year, and they know that Miss Craig gets the party on for the fifth graders.
Yeah.
So, all of that was kind of thrown to the left, but just normalizing for them how they felt and making sure that they understood, who they could come to get that.
Yes. Thank you for that. LaFay, as a teacher at Ramsey, what were some of the concerns of the teachers at the time? Like when you all met in the break room, in the conference room, and you all were, and as you know, the news kind of trickled out. It wasn't like a big announcement, at one time. Like the news was trickling that week that it may happen, it may not happen. So it was kind of a build. So leading up to, what was the response of the teachers that you came in contact with, and what was that discussion like?
Our concern was the transition from in classroom to NTI. We wanted to make sure we still provide the instruction needed. And so for many of us, technology, we use it, but not to extent of Zooming and all of that. So just getting trained. We were taking a close look at our instruction. How would that look like? We also were taking into consideration what our children were going through. What are their needs? What are their concerns? I know Marina talked about her eighth grader. We thought about all of our kids as well, and our eighth graders, and what can we do to make the best of the situation. So there was a lot going on. There was a lot of conversation. Many of us are parents as well, and grandparents. So we really had a lot of conversations just to make it the best situation that we can. And so that was pretty much what a lot of the conversations we had, and working with our administrators.
Yes. Okay. Wow. Yeah. Dave, with you having an organization and you all, pretty much having to deal with this situation, what was that like dealing with? And you all have a public Facebook page for people to comment, share their thoughts. So how did you manage that? Because you were seeing things coming from both sides, people who liked it, people who didn't like it. So how did you manage that as a moderator of your public Facebook page? What was that experience like?
Well, it continues to be challenging, because the disparities that exist between the extremes between our schools cause a lot of conflict, because people can't relate to what others are experiencing, and they tend to diminish other people's experiences when they come out to say, hey, these are some concerns we have. These are some of the things we're lacking. These are some of our struggles. Someone will be quick to come on and say, oh, that's not really happening. And it erases and marginalizes these voices. And so we've had to be very diligent with moderating the posts and the conversations, because Otherwise, the bullies and the privileged voices drown out the needs. And so one of the things that we did right away was draw attention to the disparities. We pulled up the different data points to show the extreme differences between some of our schools. There's some PTA data that we've been sharing that shows that just because some schools in some parts of town have these, make it, it's easy for them to just transition to NTI, and they've got parents that are at home or can shift to be at home, and their internet connection works, and they've got 3 or 4 devices to choose from, and quiet spaces. And just because that happens for some people doesn't mean that happens for everyone. And so we've had to just continue to beat that drum and remind people. And today we're still having that conversation, because even with the reopening, it's completely impacting communities differently, and their concerns are different, and we want to make sure that they don't get drowned out.
Thank you, Gay. Thank you for that insight. Charles, are you still with us?
Yeah, somebody came to our door.
Okay.
He is right here.
There he is. Okay, Charles, as an administrator, how with you being an administrative role, how did you lead your team into that transition? What was that like?
Well, I mean, as an educator, I subscribe to the, so what, now what? You know what I mean? Like, it is what it is. We got to make sure that we are protecting these babies. We got to make sure that we have to take ourselves out of it. You know what I mean? And what that means is just, putting kids first. We say that all the time, but do we really mean it? So that's kind of what we did in my school was, we centered all of our decisions around kids. You know what I mean? So if you start from there, then, you're always going to be safe. You're always going to be in the right place because you're thinking about kids first and not how you feel about doing a certain job or whatever. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
That makes sense?
Yeah, it makes sense. Yeah.
Yeah.
Sure. Okay.
But the hardest part is just not having the answers for people, because the answers were trickling in as time went on. That was the hardest part, because we got to balance the kids and we got to balance the adult staff. So that was the hardest part.
Wow. Okay. Now you want to step in? Okay, I'll go on. I'll move on. Okay, yes, so let's transition into transition into NTI. Let's break down NTI, and I'll start with you, Charles, as an administrator. As an administrator, what were you told about NTI, and was that something that already existed?
No, it didn't exist. I mean, we were told pretty much, and that's the thing about this, is that everything that was told to us was pretty much told to the public at the same time, pretty much. So, we were literally learning things as it was going out to the public. And I think, obviously, we knew that there was going to be a loss of skills. We knew there was going to be a loss of I mean, clearly you can't make up for direct instruction. You know what I mean? You just can't, you know what I mean? And I think our superintendent knows that, but that was I don't know if it answers your question, but that was the biggest challenge for me is just, accepting that, because our teachers, they want it so badly for the kids. They want to teach, they really do. And to not be able to control a lot of things, like kids attending, because you can't really control. I mean, you can't control that anyway, but kids turn on their cameras. You can't, a lot of things you can't control, and that was pretty rough for them.
Natasha, how did you react to NTI?
I'm going to answer that as a parent.
Okay.
Because that's who I am tonight. Because that's where my concern lies. But I was absolutely disgusted, to be honest, because I felt like, once we ended the year, when we went out March 13th, at that point is when people who say that they are for children and I'm putting them first should have begun planning for us to return. And so that information should have been rolling all summer long while we were chilling and we're sitting in the room. I mean, we can't go anywhere. We're in quarantine. You scared to touch this or that. I can't travel. I can't, So all of that should have been taken care of all summer long, so that when we reach August, I'm not hanging on by a thread as to whether or not I'm gonna have to rearrange my entire life to make sure that my children are getting to school, and I'm able to get to work. And so, yeah, I was completely thrown back by the lack of planning and communication, and I'm still there today.
Mm. LaFay, what was your experience as a teacher with NTI? Did you find that some students like NTI, or did you find that most of your students didn't like it? What was your experience with this?
Well, I have to say, as far as our school, we did plan all summer. I mean, we planned either way, whether we're going to go back or we're going to not go back. And then, so teachers were busy learning new computer programs, learning how to provide the best instruction online. What does that look like? What does that sound like? There was, as far as our students, some, I will be honest with you, some the parents didn't want them to come back because they have issues with COVID. They had issues with, what is going to be like for my students in the building with that many kids in one classroom, in the hallways, the restrooms, and so forth. And then you had some that do want to come back because of the social part of it. Of course they missed that. And still that's what it is today in my school. I can't speak for, every school, but I've been speaking a lot with my students, and many of them don't want to come back. And then some, do or don't really care. And a large part is because at our school, we worked really, really hard to provide the best instruction to students. We have so many online extracurricular activities, which we have the Harry Potter Club, and we have Star Wars Club. We have the social media. I mean, we have it all. And the great thing about it is for those students who couldn't stay after school and participate in these extracurricular activities before, they don't have that issue with NTI. So that is, so I'm actually meeting more students who would have loved to be part of stuff that I'm doing, but couldn't because they couldn't stay after school. So there are many pluses, and they love, the use of Nearpod, which is one of the programs. Many of the teachers are becoming Nearpod certified. I just became Nearpod certified today. So, and many of the things that we're doing during NTI, we're planning on continuing even when we get back in the building, 5 days a week. Because the kids love technology. They love our use of technology in the classroom. So we plan to still continue to do that. So I see some pluses. I think the negative would probably just be interaction, in the building, that part, and them getting to be around each other. That part is, the negative there. But as far as instruction, I truly say that our school, our administration did an awesome job getting the staff together, and our staff pulled together, and we did what was best for kids.
Well, okay. Gabe, NTI, what good, bad, and ugly? NTI.
Whew. Well, I got to give a shout out to teachers for rising to the occasion. None of this is a criticism toward them. Some had more challenges than others. Some had classrooms that had higher number of students that didn't have the access, or maybe didn't have the tools and the resources they needed to be able to step up immediately and serve the needs of their students. And so that's one of the things that Latasha Harrison with the Louisville PTO and I worked to put together some programming, because we felt like while everybody was figuring everything out, we wanted to create some sense of continuity and normalcy. So we started a little channel with, that's when we first got into Zoom, it was so that we could put on programs. And so we had things that teachers could offer to their families while they focused on the core curriculum. We could offer, some story time, and we had a Kung Fu Fridays, and, just various types of things that, we tried to help fill that void and create a transition for teachers and families in a pinch. So it's been challenging for everyone.
Mm. And Marina, as a parent, tell us about the experience of your child and what their experience was. What were some of the challenges, and what were some of the highs if you saw any? How did that whole experience go and that journey go?
Yeah, I mean, I was really involved with the school. So I actually had been on a work trip the week that things started to happen. That Friday, I was able to come home early and get to the school in time to help make sure that we were passing out the paper forms, those long documents that we tried to do initially when everybody went home because there was nothing really available online. Um, that experience was a little bit tough because the questions that kids had and that their parents had calling into the front office or coming into the school building to pick their kids up were questions we really couldn't answer because, like Charles said, everybody was getting the information at the same time. So if they hadn't gotten it yet, we hadn't gotten it yet at that point. My personal experience with NTI for the remainder of my daughter's 8th grade year was okay. It wasn't nothing to write home about, but at the same time, we were after spring break of her 8th grade year. So there just wasn't a whole lot more for her to really focus on and do. The teachers tried as much as they could. They tried to keep them engaged. They definitely had live meets and those things were okay. But at the time, we still had several kids who didn't have access, even some of her friends who are just not set up for online learning, right? It's just not a good situation. So our personal experience, she finished the school year fine. Emotionally, it was a little bit tough because when we had to go to the school to pick up our stuff that she had left in her locker, that was the last time she got an opportunity to see her school building, and she's not stepped foot in that school building that she spent so much time in since that point in time, right? So there's a large chunk of her school experience that's kind of still open, even though she started at a new school and should be having a new beginning. Now her high school experience with NTI has been pretty phenomenal, if I'm being honest. Much like LaFay mentioned, her school has done a really good job at making sure that the teachers have the resources and the tools and technology that they need to be effective. They're very communicative. They are present during their meetings. She's a freshman, so she goes to a school that does block scheduling. So she has at least one block in the week, which ends up being 2 because they meet twice a week, where she doesn't do anything. But she uses that time the way that it was intended as a study skills class. So she's able to catch up with her work and get things done before she begins her after school activities, which has been pretty good for us, right, from our schedule standpoint, because she's not staying up until 11, 12 o'clock at night trying to get things done after spending a full day in school and then a full evening at her after school activities. So for us, it's been positive, but we do have friends on both sides of the coin, and they're from all parts of the city, right? She's got friends who struggle because they're extroverts and they don't like sitting in front of their computer all day, so they find every opportunity to not do it. She's got friends who've been straight A students in the school building, but now that they're on NTI, they're struggling in one case or another. She's got friends who are doing exceptionally well, who have kind of focused and created a schedule for themselves and are really doing what they need to do. And she's one of those kids. Admittedly, she's a straight A student. She always has been. I've not had to kind of stay on top of her to do her work. So that's definitely a blessing for me. But we definitely realize where there are opportunities for improvement across the board. And so I do sit on the SBDM for her school. And during those meetings, we have lots of opportunity to talk about ways that we can improve things. Luckily, she's also at the same school that my son went to. So I've got lots of relationships inside the building. So if I need to reach out because maybe a teacher didn't do a recording for their meeting, or they only spent 5 minutes in the actual meet, rather than reaching out to the principal through a blanket message, I can go directly to them or go to somebody I know who knows them. So it's really all about just kind of identifying ways for them to achieve the goal, which is to keep our kids engaged and learning through this process. And then stepping back and not taking advantage of opportunities for extra study time or When the teacher comes on and she starts to do a class, but she has 15 kids out of the 20 who
Right.
haven't completed an assignment. Okay, well, we'll move on to something else. You stay and do what you need to do with the other kids. And for me, that's not an issue. Like, I'm not concerned that she's not getting her full 45-minute class. I'm more concerned that the rest of those kids get what they need too, because she's fine. So it's give and take for us from that situation.
Wow. Okay. So I felt it was very important to just kind of lay the foundation of where we began in the pandemic, where we ended up with NTI, and now we must deal with where we are now. That is, we are returning to school in a few weeks. Everybody's preparing. And for this question, I want to start with Gay. And I really want you all to be very transparent and honest as I ask these questions. Because this is the most important part of our conversation, because this deals with the now, and we need to give people information. We need to give people closure. People are still wrestling with this. It's still a big topic, so we want to be as honest, and we don't want anyone to feel like they're on the island by themselves. We don't want them to feel like they're the only ones that feel the way that they do. So I'll start with Gay, and I'll just simply ask, is returning to school the wrong or right thing to do, in your opinion? Right now?
Well, I can't answer that with a yes or no.
Okay.
It's not as easy as the board vote last Thursday night.
Yeah, right.
And that wasn't easy. Trust me,
Yes.
I could tell it wasn't easy. But it depends is the answer. Some of our schools probably are safe to return and have the resources and can provide the safe distancing. But are we prioritizing wants ahead of needs? And that's what my concern is. Many of the people that are pushing to return to school are doing so more out of want than they are out of necessity. And as a district, I believe that we should be prioritizing our students that need to go back first, and make sure that it's safe in those schools, in those settings, for those students to go back safely. And unfortunately, our district infrastructure is wildly outdated. And so expecting our schools to be able to all be safe right away is unrealistic. And as a district, I think we have to focus on making sure that our most vulnerable students and the schools in our in the our older buildings and most neglected buildings have been made safe. And so if we kind of just all go back at once, some people are great. Like I was saying with our social media posts, people tend to drown each other out, and the people that are fine say it's fine. And then we lose track and we lose sight of the ones that are struggling. And so my answer is I feel like the vote should have been no, because we shouldn't go back until everyone is safe. We shouldn't sacrifice. We shouldn't be willing to make sacrifices for some so that others can go back because they want to.
Okay. So I'm gonna go to Natasha next. Natasha, as a parent, and I know you represent yourself as a parent tonight. What are your feelings?
Okay, so let me first say, I want to be clear in my last answer that the schools may have done an excellent job of planning, but that should have never been on them to do. That's the plight of the district. There should have been an elementary school plan, a middle school plan, and a high school plan that was orchestrated by higher leadership and then brought down, and each school takes that plan and you morph it to whatever you need it to do to work for your community. Because then the liability is not upon an administrator who may not have the same resources that in this building that they have in another building. And I just really think that some of us may want to, because my teachers, for my children, we didn't miss a thing. My son had a 4.2 last year, and he's rocking a 4.2 right now. My daughter, NTI is not her thing. It's not for her. But I'm her mother, so she's never going to miss, she's in elementary school. That's my education. If she doesn't make it through elementary school, that's on me. That's what I mean. And so whatever she needs, I'm going to make sure she gets it. But I'm in a place where I'm inside of a system that does not spread things out equitably. They don't think about what it's going to be after this or after that. And then you're not asking questions of the people who it affects the most, not just parents, but educators alike, because teachers are still people. They still have families. They still have, people that they're taking care of that might be high risk. They have children that they also have to make sure gets their education while they're planning and doing everything that they can do for somebody else's children as well. It affects staff members who are driving the buses, nutrition people, all of that. And so for us to classify somebody as less expendable than somebody else is crazy to me. And why we are going back into a bit. And then this is where my disgust comes from. Going back into this building now is rushed the way it is because you failed to plan when you should have been planning. That should have been happening all along. Logistically, somebody should have been walking through these buildings as a team from the district level with building leadership and logistically laying this all out for that school so that principal and that administration is not sitting there with their hair being pulled out about how they're going to make this happen. They know that they have support. There should have been some things set in place for social emotional learning. And we absolutely need to make the difference between social emotional and mental health. Yes, they intertwine with one another, but that's two different things. I'm a licensed therapist as well. So it's social emotional learning is me teaching you how to socialize and how to respond to certain things that are happening to you then. But the trauma that happens with mental health is not going to be able to be held by me telling you to take 5 breaths and puff it out. So, these fly by night plans we got about, we're going to go in the building and we're going to make it work. And it's going to be 2 days here and 2 days there. And that even was at the 9th hour. Without asking anyone that it affects, because there are so many creative ways that this could have come out in a different way for us, especially when you bring the politics into it, because I stay connected to that as well. And so I know that those House bills, it's not enough Democrats to have, pushed that back. And so now here we are, because the entire state depends a lot on the revenue that comes from Jefferson County, because we are the biggest district and we make that revenue happen. And I know that because when I worked in Child Protective Services, our administrative reviews had to be correct because we ran the money for the state. And other little counties depend on our money.
Wow.
So of course our dollars, this is why we're being pushed to go back in there, because they need. I'm not going to give you the rest of this money unless you get yourself back in school. If Greenup County can go back and Rock Castle County can go back, then y'all need to be making some plans. And if we had been planning all along, we would have been strategically ready to counteract that in some way, proving to them that we have done everything that we can do to make it safe for our children. And there's no way that we're going to be able to get past that without risking somebody's life. I should not be at the door of having to decide between my livelihood and my children. I shouldn't be at that door. I shouldn't be at the door of having to decide between my daughter, who has an autoimmune and lung issues, going back to school because I want her to keep a teacher who has created a relationship with her all year long and has gotten us through a rough time, because NTI was not good. It's not she's ADHD. She can't sit in front of a screen all day long, but her teacher was everything to her. And she's gotten her through this entire time. And if I don't send her back and risk her life, then she's not going to get to keep her teacher. What kind of bull is that? I mean, I'm just being really honest here. And we don't have a plan for that before now. We are a $1 billion district. You mean to tell me we couldn't get this figured out with all of the PhDs that we got running through here? Give me a break.
Ooh. Yes. Yeah. Okay. LaFay, as a teacher, are you scared to go back in the classroom?
No, I'm not scared, but I do understand what. I'm sorry, your name is covered up, so I understand everything she's saying.
Yeah.
I guess I'm spoiled because at my school we've been planning, and you're right.
I mean, we don't know what we're planning for.
I don't know any different, because at my school, regardless of where it's coming from, it comes. Our principal has been on it. We had our decals. We've had all that way back in September. So we've been planning to go back since all the way back then. And but I do understand how you feel. Our kids, regardless if they choose to stay virtual, because it's a choice, they could choose to stay virtual or they could choose to come back in the building. They're not going to lose their teacher. I can't speak for other schools, But I do know at our school, they get to keep the same teacher. And we got a vote on our schedule. So we were all included, including those part of all of our stakeholders. So I don't know if that's, like I said, I didn't know any different because that's how it's been at my school. But my school, I'm very proud of my school because I've worked at 5 different schools. So this is my 5th one. And I love the fact that if it's the case that it wasn't come down from the district, like I said, as teachers, we didn't know it. And they work really, really hard. In our administration, doing that work ahead of time so that we could come in and do what we need to do. And like you said, provide us with the resources. As far as students, there are some parents or teachers who are concerned for their own kids going back in the building. This virtual hybrid does affect them because we've been home. So we haven't had to worry about childcare in a sense because we're home. Now there are some teachers who will have concern of where will I put my kid? Because elementary, I think there was a change. We went from 5 days to now hybrid.
Yeah.
So for those who have elementary school kids, they are stressed out right now as teachers because they just found out I'm going to have to find, which is the case for a parent. Get that. And then of course, this hybrid schedule, some like it, some don't. Because they're only coming in for 2 days or something like that. And so, it's not the 5 days. And so we have to adjust because now we're teaching virtual. And then we've got to have sort of a lesson there. And then we have the kids coming in the building. So there's a lot of planning that we're having to do right now. We're working overtime right now. We're stressed out. I'm not going to lie. And then also, we're glad we got our COVID shot. But, and of course, speaking to what Gay said, my school was built in 2008 or like 2007. It's a fairly new school. So we don't have some of the issues that some of the older schools have. So I do understand your concern there if that's the, case as far as those schools. But it's one of those situations where, I don't know for sure, why we're going back right now. For a lot of teachers, it's the end of the year. It's almost like at this point, we've been at NTI all this time. And so going through all this transition and all this is, kind of alarming a little bit. We just, want to finish out the years, just staying at NTI. I feel like a lot of teachers, but I'll be honest, we just don't have a choice. We have to just do what we got to do. We got to do. And if there's a decision made that, our focus have to stay positive and just get in there. But I do understand how you feel. I understand how Gay feels. As far as other schools, I hope and pray that they are just as blessed. It is my school, but if that's not the case, that would be a concern of parents, teachers, and the administrators. I do believe the administrators are speaking out as well. I do believe that.
I want to thank everybody for really engaging in the comments. As you all see, everybody that's on here commenting, I am right now posting your comments live on this feed for everyone to see. So please keep the comments coming, please. We are hearing you. And if anyone of our panelists reads the comments, you want to reply to them, feel free to do so. But I do want to touch on what LaFay was saying as far as she doesn't know why we're going back to school, and touching on what Natasha's saying is about, the politics of us going back to school.
But
yeah, go ahead.
I don't mean to interrupt,
go ahead, no.
But from Natasha and from LaFay, you can see that that's equity. That's the problem, right? Because Faye's school was built in 2007, and some schools, especially, and I don't mean some, schools in the West End, and I know that Foster is fairly new, but with
the roof caving in.
Okay, so therefore you have an issue that is not serving the needs of the population that is most at promise. So what do we do for that population that is most at promise? So there's 2 pandemics within a pandemic, right? So the pandemic of COVID, that's disproportionately affecting African American students. and their families. And then you have the pandemic of our African American students and students in poverty that are not being able, that are sitting in front of the computer and not engaged. So they're suffering from that as well. So what do we do? You know, and I guess that is the question, because from what I see is that students need to be back. They do. They need to be back in the building. They need to be back because they need that. They need that one-on-one. But so that's my question. What about our students that are most at promise?
And I'll let Charles start with that. Charles?
Man, y'all saying some good stuff tonight. Like I'm really enjoying the dialogue. I mean, I'm gonna put it to you like this. Like, I'm not gonna give my personal opinion. You know me, Tony. You know me. You know how I am, teammate. But I will say this. I think that I guess let me just reverse it. I went to a basketball game the other night and I saw our kids celebrating after a win. And it was so good to see the kids have that opportunity to see the look in their eyes. Some of the seniors that, you know, some kids last year who was seniors who came back in the building and didn't get a chance to go out properly. Like it really touched my heart. And I will say this, that I think that, you know, parents have the option to send their kids. And, you know, a lot of at our school, I want to say it's like maybe 60% are sending their kids in. And I mean, and that's their choice. Now, what my opinion is, I try not to have an opinion about it. But again, my whole thing is just making sure these kids are safe. Just seeing how hard these teachers are working, these principals. I'm telling you, like, we're spending hours at schools at night, taping stuff, marking stuff, checking faucets, coming up with plans to make sure that we're sanitizing everything. I mean, just trying to think of every detail that, I mean, there's always a scenario that no one thinks of, like, oh, I didn't think about that. So those things are popping up. It's a new world for us. So it's like we're creating a new school. Even this new, when we come back, it's still going to be a new school because it's not how we normally do business. So it's been difficult because we know that the public wants us to come through, and we want to come through for these kids. And if anybody got into education, you got to love kids. And you know, I love kids, so it stays on my mind all the time, just making sure that, you know, that we're taking care of everybody equally the same way. I don't know if that answered your question, but.
No, that's wonderful. Marina, are you sending your child back to school?
I am.
Okay.
She's a freshman in high school. I'm confident in the plans that I've seen. I'm confident in her school building and the resources that they have. She's a freshman, and that's really my primary reason. Is I would like for her to have these next couple of weeks and next couple of months to be able to get used to a building before she goes back next year. And the possibility is that she'll have 1,900 kids around her at one time. So it's important to me that she feel comfortable and confident in her environment. And so while she's been a straight A student on NTI, I don't know what she's going to be like when she gets into a building with 1,900 students. So we're going to take this opportunity for her to do that. Now, I do have flexibility in my schedule, so I won't be putting her on a bus, which will leave more space for other students who need to be able to have transportation to school. She has always taken her lunch to school, and she'll continue to do that herself, so she doesn't have to stand in a lunch line, therefore reducing the number of kids that need to go through the lunch line when it's time. So we're doing our part as best as we know how, while not taking the opportunity away from her, simply because her grades may not indicate that she might not need to be in the building. She needs to be in the building for other reasons. So we've made that decision. The other part to that is, you know, she is involved in extracurricular activities. And so for me, if she can go to dance class and if she can compete on her school dance team and she can have practice and she can go to the dance studio, then there's no reason why I should be afraid to send her to a school building. She knows how to do what she needs to do to protect herself and to protect others. And we just, as a family, have taken this time the same way that we expected our educators and teachers and administrators to take time and plan. We've taken time to have conversations, frank conversations about what it would mean if she was infected. how that would impact and what the trickle down effect of that is. So I'm hopeful that a lot of other families are doing the same, right? Rather than just saying my child isn't going to wear a mask all the time, or my child shouldn't have to stay away from their friends. That's not the world we live in today. The world we live in today requires that they wear a mask to protect themselves and to protect others. And the world we live in today requires that they not hug each other when they see each other. So we have as much obligation as parents as we are expecting from our district to prepare our kids properly for a return to the building. She has a lot of friends who are not going back, who are in similar situations as us. And then she has friends who are going back, who might also be seen as kids that may not need to go. But again, we're thinking about our individual child's needs, right? And so just because I'm considering and advocating for what my child needs doesn't mean that I'm not considering what's necessary for the other children in her school or the other children in the district, right? So it's equally as important that the plans be placed and be put in place to make sure that everyone is safe. And so, you know, my position on the SBDM Council is on behalf of all the children in the school. It's not just on behalf of my daughter. So again, we've made some plans and we've made some decisions ourselves. And I've heard, you know, Latasha speak about the lack of planning or lack of information, we'll say. Who knows what the planning looks like, right? But and I would agree that, you know, there are probably more things that could have been done at a district level, right, for each school grade or each school area. However, I think that most schools have done what they could with what they had, right? Not only am I a volunteer at her school, but I still volunteer at the elementary school and the middle school that she went to. And those principals have been in very similar positions. It's just, there's a lot to consider. And frankly, I look at the next 2 months as an opportunity to test out these plans, right? The last 2 months of school, yeah, we've got some things we need to take care of, but it's not the end of the world. It's not the beginning of the school year where we're starting new instruction and we're trying to make sure that we get off on the right foot. Give us an opportunity to get back into the building, to test out what every school has planned, to see where the gaps are, and then use the summer to be able to fill in those gaps and make sure that we're ready for even more students to come in when the fall comes around the next time. That's the perspective that I take as a parent and as someone who's involved in the school district.
I understand what you're saying, but I guess my question is that the students that are most at promised, why they shouldn't, they're already in trauma, right? They're already facing this pandemic. So we're bringing them back to test out a plan.
I totally get it. It's not, I don't know that we're going to end up with a.
I'm just saying that it's not, and I'm like Chuck, I'm not going either way. You know, if I got to go back, I got to go back. You know, I love kids all day, every day, right? Mm-hmm. But the students that the parents need to go to work, you know, I got, my child has to go. I'm sorry, you know, and so we're testing them in a petri dish, and they're already in, you know, I mean, I just can't get my thoughts together, but you understand.
No, I know exactly what you mean. I think my perspective is fall.
Wanted to say something.
Can we talk about testing real quick? Go ahead, Gay.
Okay, wow. So first of all, I want to remind people that we have not been able to speak at a board meeting since this pandemic set in. And a lot of the plans that the district was moving forward with, student assignment, for example, have kind of been put on the back burner. And so why are we not demanding that the district go ahead and implement their student assignment plan if they're going to be rearranging schedules and assigning students to different, you know, experimenting why and testing out new systems? Why are we forcing the old system to work when there's a new proposal? Like, why has that been allowed to be put on the back burner, and why have our voices been allowed to be shut out all this time? Charles, I heard him say that he got into education. You don't get into education unless you love kids and you're there for kids. Absolutely. But you didn't get into education to risk your life. And this, we can't deny that this is a racial equity issue, and that our Black families and our Black educators and our Black students carry a greater risk. And so we need to be making sure that we focus on the racial justice aspect of this issue, and make sure that no one is required to enter a school building unless it is safe for them to do so. You know, I don't know if you saw the Kentucky Alliance press conference that we held on Sunday morning. I encourage you to go watch our video. 2 JCPS teachers, JCTA officers spoke at that press conference about the racial equity aspect of this, and their advice was for parents: keep your kids home, don't send them back to school. The focus on high stakes testing is one of the driving forces behind this. Don't let them use your students to experiment on and perform testing on them. And so as a parent, that's where parents can, what Marina was saying, parents can be advocates. We can push for the ability to opt out of high stakes tests, because if 10% of families keep their kids home from high stakes tests, the data is irrelevant. They can't use any of the data. So if they know we're going to be doing that, then they won't administer the tests. And a lot of the drive all the way from the federal level down is money, greed, and privatization driven. And so, you know, we have to be aware of all these things and fight against the oppressor, not allow the administration and the government that just does what it does because whoever squeaks the loudest or has the most expensive lobbying bank account is able to get their way. So House Bill 579 is the opt-out bill that just got filed in the House. We need to make some noise and ask our legislators to bring it through committee so that we have so parents have the ability to opt out. But even if we don't get that bill, there are still other things we can do. And so Dear JCPS is going to be hosting some, we've got a web page that we're putting together, and we're going to be hosting a town hall and doing some other parent education as to the way that parents can advocate. And this is, as a white parent, you know, there are things that white parents can be doing to advocate as well. It's not, even though it is a racial justice issue, white parents can be the allies. White parents can be the accomplices. You know, there are it's across race, religion, party lines. The opt-out movement is not specific to any category. Everyone, there are people in every group and every faith. Even it's a religious issue as well. So, you know, watch for more of that to come.
The testing is ridiculous.
Yes, and we're gonna get into the testing. I really want to answer this transportation question real quick because we haven't dealt with that. And I'm a JCPS bus driver, so I'll just say 3 things about the transportation, and then I want to move right back into the testing because I think that's important. And I think I really want to hear from Charles and Faye and also Latasha on the testing. But as it stands with JCPS transportation and school buses. We were told that there is no social distance mandate on JCPS school buses. Also, students are going to be required to wear a mask, and they will be offered hand sanitizer as well. The biggest concern for most of the school bus drivers are that students will not have their temperature taken until kids are at the school. So exposure for bus drivers is a reality. So those are just 3 things that you need to know about transportation within JCPS. And thank you, Kenyatta, for that question. So I want to get back into this testing, and I'll let Nairi lead into that conversation, starting with Chuck. So,
well, I mean, if you look on my Twitter feed, I have canceled testing anyway. So I just, you know, I do personally, I think that our most at-promise students need to see their teachers, need to see their friends, especially when I think about African American students, that how we learn, you know, we are a collective when we learn. And so, but the testing, I am not a fan of it at all. And I just want to know your what your feelings are about the fact that they are saying that we have to take standardized testing.
Is that directed at me, Nari? I'm sorry.
Yes. Everyone.
Well, I want to start with Charles.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
As an administrator.
Well, my thought on it is I don't like it. I'm just going to be honest with you. And the reason I don't like it is because the school year is already going to be short for these kids coming back. And so that time is going to be spent, a lot of it on testing. And then when I think about, you know, as Gay, as she mentioned, you know, thinking about the vulnerable, you know, populations, you know, I think about our English language learners, you know, they're coming back, they're having to do the access test. I mean, we're adding all that in, and then these poor kids, you know, the majority of their school time back will be testing. So, you know, I don't like it, but I mean, at the same time, though, again, you know, in my role, you know, we just have to prepare for it and just, you know, pump the kids up and get them ready for it. That's all we can do.
Mm-hmm. And I want to thank you all, especially, you know, the teachers and
parents
who
can
work
opt out.
Yeah,
parents, you parents can opt out. They do not have to allow their students to take the test, and we need to hold Biden responsible.
Okay, Faye, you want to jump in?
I don't like standardized tests anyway, so but I definitely don't feel that we should do it this year. I agree. When I reposted your post, so I do not agree with it. I do want to say about the transportation. I do want to mention one thing. I don't like the fact that it's going to be crowded like it is. And for some of our kids, I rode the bus with our kids that go to the West End from our school, which is out in the J-Town area. It is already miserable. And for 2 hours on this bus, so in the situation in the midst of COVID, so that part is a concern to me. But as far as the testing, I'm not really with it. And as far as the equity too, I do know Gay from social media, and I have to agree with a lot of things you say as far as equity. And one of the things that equity across the board, we need teachers, we need parents, we need everyone on board. Even before COVID, equity was an issue. So and teachers can't do it alone. And so there's a lot with that. And parents need to understand that is strong, but they got to speak up, in their schools. And so I have to say, one of the reasons why I feel I am spoiled in my school, because we have everybody speaks up in that school. And as far as equity is an issue. So for example, when, some schools are only required to have, I think it's like 30% or 10% in their gifted and talented. We not having that, because our kids, we have close to 50% of our students are students of color. So we make sure that reflects our kids and our gifted and talented. We looked at our advanced program and all of that. I had to throw that in because equity is my thing. And, we can't just during a pandemic look at equity. We got to look at it all across the board. And so I do applaud Gay and others who are out there in the community and who are fighting for our kids and equity. Even before the pandemic, Gay, you were doing that. So we just need to continue to do that. And unfortunately, with pandemic, we see the results of not dealing with the equity as good as we should have beforehand. Those buildings, those issues with the buildings should have been addressed before pandemic. Okay, so so that's all I have to say on that. Thank you.
Okay, Latasha, jump in.
I digress.
Okay, you sure?
Yes, sir.
Okay, so Marina, with you sending your child back, what was that conversation like when you all decided that would happen? What was that? I want to know what that, kind of delve into that and see what that conversation was like.
Sure. So when the options came out back in October, even, right, where her dad and I sat down with her to figure out how she felt about being back in the building. Her perspective was just as I mentioned before. She's a freshman. She really wants to be in the building. She wants to understand which stairwell she's supposed to go up versus going down. She wants to know that she has some semblance of an understanding of the layout of the school building. She wanted to be able to see her teachers. None of these teachers have ever met her in person, which is very different from her last school. So we decided collectively, okay, well, if we do let you go back, then are you willing to make the sacrifices that need to be made, which include you don't get to ride the bus. You don't get to stand right next to your friends and have a quick conversation or hug them when you see them in the morning. You're not going to be able to sit with them at lunch because everybody's going to have an assigned seat based on which class you're in at the time that you get a lunch period. You're going to have to leave school directly and come straight home. Those things had to be discussed because, and she's different age, right? So at the end of the day, she's in high school. So it was a collective conversation. But she also was very adamant, again, about wanting to understand the layout of the building, wanting to understand her place in the school, wanting to meet her teachers who have been really beneficial for her in this environment, transitioning into a new type of learning. The pace of learning is very different still too. And those things were important to her. So we made the decision that we would make the sacrifices we needed to make personally, because again, just going to the building doesn't mean that the rest of life continues to move on, right? We still are limited, limited in the families that we hang around with closely within our home or in their home. We don't go see everybody that we always would normally see. We do go to family dinners, but we're really careful about where we go and what we take with us. Her exposure has to be limited in a way that she won't end up taking that on to her dance team or to her dance studio. So we try to be real cognizant of the things we do personally to make this happen for her. And she was okay with continuing to limit those other things if it meant that she could go back to the building.
Thank you for that, Marina.
Can we read this comment? It's funny. Someone said, Kenyatta said, are you gonna put it on there?
Yeah, I was thinking the same thing. It's
My
hilarious.
daughter's teacher has said she can't wait to hug them when they get face to face. Thank God we chose virtual.
Okay, yeah, you are. This has been a great discussion, but before we wrap up and before we end, because we've been at this for about an hour now, I want everyone to just have some final thoughts or final words. And I'd like to start with Gay. And again, this is the final thoughts, final words as we move forward in 2 weeks to opening up JCPS schools where students will be back to in-person learning. So final thoughts, Gay.
So something Faye said that I want to echo, and that is that this has been going on since before COVID. Our schools, we want a safe return, but our schools weren't safe before COVID. Safe isn't just safe from the exposure and risk of COVID, but it's safe from harmful practices such as high stakes tests. It's safe from armed police officers. We would rather have more mental health counselors than armed police officers, which can be traumatizing for some of our families to see an armed police officer in our school buildings. We need to make sure that we have trauma-informed care and restorative practices and other, safe from racist and culturally incompetent curriculum, safe from teachers who aren't culturally competent, that are causing harm. Like, these are things that we have been speaking at board meetings and protesting and getting board members replaced, and even teachers have been sicking out and going to Frankfurt on behalf of funding issues and equity issues. This isn't new, this isn't unique, and it's not limited to Jefferson County. So, the momentum has been hijacked by disaster capitalists and those who have seen an opportunity to use this pandemic to their own benefit, but it doesn't change who we are as a community. And we are fighters, and we will fight for our schools, and we will fight for our kids, and they need to not lose sight of that. We need to not lose sight of that. We can do this.
Thank you, Gay. Thank you so much for joining us in this important discussion. Thank you so much.
Thank you for having me. Appreciate
Thank you. LaFaye Marshall, thank you for being with us. Final thoughts, final comments.
I just want to say that, in order for a child to be truly educated, parents, administration, and teachers, we need to be on the same page. When that doesn't happen, we need for, teachers and parents, if we see that our powers that be are not doing what we need, then we need to speak up in our schools, and we need to look at what they're teaching. We need to look at the materials they're using. We need to look at how the building is being taken care of. We need to see how students are being tested. We need to address any teachers that are doing microaggressions or anything like that is causing more trauma to our students. So these are things, so here in this pandemic, parents, you need to be going in and see what's going on in these schools. Don't just rely on what you're told. You need to be, front and center as to what's going on with your students, your child in the school. And just so you know, teachers are working hard and trying to meet the needs of your students. We're bending over backwards, but we need the support of our parents. We need them to have our backs and give us that support. And part of that is go to the board meetings. If you're not heard, you'll get heard eventually if there's enough of you. Make some phone calls. Show up in the school. Talk to these principals. Just don't leave us hanging out there to do it for you. Your voice can be heard, but there needs to be more of you in every school, not just overall, but in each and every single school. So that's my final.
Thank you, LaFaye. Thank you for joining us for this important conversation. Marina, final thoughts, comments?
Yeah, I decided a long time ago. My son entered JCPS schools when I actually was only 20 years old. I was a teenage parent. There's nobody that understands some of the plight of some of our students as I do, simply because of the experiences I had finishing high school, actually 3 years of high school, because he was born at the beginning of my sophomore year, as a single parent, a teenage single parent, right? So I get it. I decided early on, though, that I thought that the way that I could help best was to step up to be that person at my school, because at a minimum, I could be seen by the other parents that were there. I could be trusted because I was a face that they might recognize. And I could create relationships with the people in the building that would effectively help me serve more than just my student. And so for 24 years, I've done just that, right? And so I can't echo what LaFaye said any more than to just remind people that, excuse me, at the end of the day, decision-making at your school really should be a three-pronged approach. It should be your administration, your teaching representatives, and your parent representatives. And so if you can't make it to a meeting, if you can't, you don't feel like you can go to the school building to be heard, you are concerned that your emails are not going to be read, no one is taking your call, reach out to other parents in the building, reach out to, if you have an SBDM, the parent representatives on that SBDM, that's all public knowledge. Get that information and ask for them to speak up for you. Right? We're all here for a purpose, and we all should be doing this collectively. No one should have to do this on their own. I am grateful for the people in my village who stepped up and helped me when I needed it. And so I'm willing to be there for those who need it now. Regardless of what your decision is about going back to school, I just ask that you be educated from the source rather than through hearing information one way or another. Reach out, do some research, ask questions, listen to opportunities like what Wave FM has offered us tonight, and just be educated about what your options are and truly where what is best for your family, I guess, is really where I want to go. So
Thank you, Marina. Thank you. Beautifully said. Thank you so much. Natasha Craig, final thoughts, final comments.
As a parent, I would say that no matter what happens, I know that my children are going to be okay. But as an employee, my concern is always that I have the village concept. So if one part of the village isn't served, then none of the village is served. If one part isn't growing, then none of us are growing. And because it happens at one level, if it doesn't happen at another level, then it's not happening at all. If I'm building a house and one of the walls falls down, I don't have a house anymore. And so I think it's easy for us, who have gone to school and gotten 50,000 degrees and we live every day and I'm going to hustle and make it right for my kids and whatever else, But as a parent who may come from some place that wasn't as great as my situation, I can only give my child what I have. I can't give them something I don't have. And so if all I have to give them is the dysfunction that I've grown up with, I can't be expected to function on the same level as someone else who had different circumstances. And so it's our responsibility as a part of that village to pull those parents along and to advocate for them and to be their voice when they can't be. And because they may not say it, they may not show up, they may not, but they're doing the best that they can do. And so I'm always going to say to my parents, ask the questions if you can't. If you can't, I'm going to ask it for you. It is about responsibility, but it's also about accountability. And you can say all day long that you got a plan, but I need to see it happening. And I'm not personally, I don't, one way or the other, my house is going to be at risk. And we've been traumatized by COVID. So, I think that that's the other part that people forget, that this has been something very different for everyone. Some people have lost people, some people have not. And in the middle of trying to do my job, I'm planning a funeral for my father who was, lost to COVID. And I'm sick with COVID and my children are sick with COVID and I've had 2 strokes. Everybody's situation is different. So we just need to be careful in how we address our parents and expecting them to do what it is that we do, because everybody can't do what we do. And when they can't, if we're a part of that village, then we need to be responsible for stepping up to do it on their behalf.
Thank you. Thank you, Latasha. Thank you so much for joining us in this panel discussion. And you came on last minute, so I really, really appreciate you. Okay. Thank you so much.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you. And Charles Marshall, last but certainly not least, give us some insight, if you don't mind. Final thoughts, final comments.
Well, my final thought is, why are you gonna make me follow these brilliant women after all these wonderful things they said?
Yeah. Ladies first, gentlemen.
I got you. I'll just say this. This is something that I've never seen in my lifetime. I know, it's a pandemic, and there's no playbook for this. You know what I'm saying? Like, there's no playbook anywhere. So that it's been difficult. And what I'll say to kind of echo the other panelists is to, as parents, you do have the power. Don't ever feel like you don't have power. You have power. Your voice, it needs to be heard, and we want your voice. I know at my school at Fern Creek, you all are out, in the trenches and speaking to people. I can only speak from my perspective, which is the school, and we're working our butts off. All day, all night, thinking of troubleshooting any scenario that could possibly happen, and it's difficult. But I want y'all to know that we love these kids. You know what I mean? Like, what's that saying in loco parentes? These kids are mine too, and that's just how I see it. If one doesn't have it, then the way I see it, then I don't think anybody should have it. We all need to have. It needs to be equity across the board. And the way I see it is just, parents, please reach out, give us ideas. If there's something you're not comfortable with or you have questions, give your idea to us, because again, we can't think of every scenario. You may have an idea. We're like, I never thought of that. Thank you for sharing that. So always remember, Marina, thank you for, for serving, on your SBDM. Those parents, you are always welcome. We need your voice.
Absolutely.
Thank you. And Chuck, you were wrong. You don't get the last word. Now Reed gets the last word. I tricked you.
You're gonna be sleeping on the couch tonight if you don't.
No, that's why. You see what I did? I had to turn it around.
I speak on behalf of. I love all kids. I speak on behalf of my African American babies. I know what they're going through right now. I love them. I know what the parents are going through right now. And if I can be a voice for them, then I know that I've done what I'm supposed to do, right? So we're going to make it do what it do, right? So that's all we can do. And thank y'all for being here. And I wasn't going to say anything, but I just...
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I'd like to thank everyone for watching tonight. This has been a wonderful, wonderful conversation. I especially want to thank our panelists for being a part of this conversation. I hope our audience, I hope you all gained a wealth of knowledge, a wealth of insight. And again, I hope you are not feeling alone in the way you think. Again, this is a no judgment zone. To the people who commented, we really appreciate your comments. We've been posting your comments all night. Feel free to reach out to any of the administrators or any of the people that were on. If you all don't mind, please put your email address or your social media handles in the comments so they can reach you all. But I'd like to thank you all, our audience, for engaging. But I especially want to thank the parents, the teachers, the administrators, those who are in transportation, and the journey that we are on. We are all in this together. And what I love what everyone was saying is that we are a village. So let's move on. Let's press on, and let's do what's best for our children. This has been a wonderful, wonderful discussion. I want to thank everybody for watching tonight. Please stay tuned tomorrow for the Rich Girl Podcast, tomorrow at 7 p.m. And thank you for continuing to support this Black-owned platform. We are RTBI. We are founders. Until next time, like we always say, real talk to mate. Okay, while I'm rapping. Okay.
No, I do have something to say. Parents, learning hubs are an option. If you do not want your students to go back into the classroom, learning hubs are an option. So always remember that. Learning hubs are an option. I just want to throw that out there.
Okay. Any more? Anything else?
And Justice Now.
Look, see, she plugging. Okay.
And watch the kids' video.
Yeah, we'll play that next. Okay. So we started with kids and we're gonna end on kids. Okay. So as we say on Real Talk with T-Made, please lead with love, but also protect your spirit. Protect your spirit at all times. Thank you all again for this important conversation. This has been Real Talk with T-Made. Thank you all. Thank you all. Thank you all. And we are going to leave you all with this. You want to introduce this, Nari? These wonderful kids.
Yes. Support HB 43, the Crown Act. The Crown Act. My students are fighting for that bill. Because, do you know why? Because there's an intersection with HB 43, right? Because if we can't get HB 43 passed, how are we going to get all the other bills to pass? Because if no one's able to be at the table because of the way that their hair looks like, who can be there on our behalf? So that's something that my students have learned, and they are fighting for this bill. And so they wrote a song about it. And here we go.
Thank you all. See you next week.
Twist it up, twist it down, roll your weave to the ground. It's my culture.